Welcome to Whispr. If you're here, you're ready for the unsettling, the unexplained, and the stories that will send chills down your spine. Today, we're diving into real stories, straight from Reddit. So Reddit, what's your most disturbing, scary, or creepy experience? Got a story of your own? Send it to the email in the description and you might hear it here next. Story 1. A few years ago, I was walking through the woods, a bit off the beaten track, when I caught a powerful, sweet smell. Curious, I pulled back some undergrowth to see what it was, and there it was. A dead body. The guy had clearly been there for a while. He was swollen, discolored, and the wildlife had already started feeding on him. I called the police, who told me to stay with the body until they arrived. It took them a while to get there, and as night fell, I sat alone with him in the dark for what felt like hours. It turned out he had committed suicide. For a long time after, I had dreams about him. He would talk to me, saying horrible things. Mainly that he was angry I'd disturbed his resting place and that I should kill myself. It was probably just my imagination, but it was disturbing. And even now, he still shows up in my dreams. I'm sure he'll be back tonight after typing this. Story 2. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion late at night. The drive was about 2 hours, and I didn't stay the night because I had work the next day. Most of the road was lined with dense bushes and trees, exactly the kind of creepy road you see in horror movies. After about 45 minutes of driving, I started feeling really tired, like out of nowhere. I knew I wasn't going to make it to the next town, but there was nowhere safe to pull over. So I did something questionable. I parked off to the side of the road, hidden behind some bushes, and made a note of the time, 11:22 p.m., before falling asleep. I was, woken up by a scratching sound. I checked the time. It was 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and since I was exhausted, I didn't think much of it and went back to sleep. Later, I was woken up by the same sound. This time, it was 12:40, and the scratching didn't stop. My first thought was maybe it was an animal, but why would it come back an hour later? I looked in my rearview mirror and barely caught a glimpse of something running into the woods. I freaked out and sped off. I drove a bit further, and around a bend just up the road I saw a car parked by the side, the driver's door wide open. I slowed down, trying to see if anyone was inside, but there was no one. Then, out of nowhere, this guy comes sprinting around the corner, shouting at me, yelling, "Hey, you, get out of your car now." I didn't think twice. I sped off and never saw him again. Moral of the story: never sleep on the side of a deserted road. Story 3. A few summers ago, I went on a midnight bike ride with a friend. We went our separate ways at the end of the evening, and I had about 2 blocks left to ride by myself. Because of construction, I had to ride on the sidewalk, and the streets were empty until I reached the corner where I had to turn. That's when I saw him, a man maybe in his 40s, a little scruffy but not homeless, walking by himself. The sidewalk was narrow, so I didn't want to freak him out. As I got about 6 feet behind him, I said, "Hey, behind you." He turned around and gave me this angry look. I turned onto my street, but he started following me, shouting that he was going to kill me. I live right off the corner, so I didn't want him to know where I lived. I decided to loop around the block to lose him. When I came back around, I looked down my street and saw him standing on my front stoop, staring out like he knew where I lived. He saw me ride by but didn't say anything. I went back to my friend's house that night, and 2 days later my bike was stolen from the alley by my house. Edit. The guy wasn't homeless, and my area has a lot of mentally ill people, so it wasn't unusual for him to look like a normal person. But that was still the creepiest thing. Story 4. When I was younger, my parents let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights since my sister was a light sleeper. One night, I woke up suddenly, feeling an intense sense of dread, like an instinct. I bolted upright and looked out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, surrounded by trees, and in the moonlight, I saw a silhouette in one of the trees. The dog ran to the window and started snarling. Terrified, I ran to my parents' room and told them about the person outside. My dad grabbed something defensive and went out with the dogs to check. He came back a while later and told me there was no one there. I went back to bed, but then, just as I thought I could sleep, I saw him again, standing outside my window, signaling for me to be quiet before running away. I couldn't stop crying for hours after that. Story 5. My house sits far back on the lot and it's laid out strangely. The sidewalk runs along the front of the living room and ends at the porch. Large windows allow a lot of light in, but they also mean no privacy. One night, my family was on vacation and I was home alone. I decided to get drunk and passed out on the couch in the living room around 9 p.m. I woke up suddenly, feeling cold, and couldn't shake the chills. That's when the banging started. It came from right above me from the window. Someone was standing there pounding on the glass. I didn't move, but I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. The banging continued, then stopped for a few moments, before starting again, this time from 2 different directions, one at the window, the other at the front door. They kept banging for about 40 minutes. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to move or look. Finally, it stopped. The next day, I called a friend to stay over. His response, "What for? So we can both be murdered in our sleep?" That's all for tonight. If you enjoyed these stories, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. And don't forget, if you've got a story, share it with me at the email below. Until next time, stay in the light.